Ghost and supernatural stories by ghostly echoes retold. I arrived in the tiny snow-blanketed village just a few days before Christmas. It was meant to be a peaceful retreat, a place to unwind away from the chaos of the city. The village was picturesque, with cobblestone streets, charming cottages, and a small church at its heart. Yet, despite the festive cheer, something about the place felt wrong. The air seemed thick with a history that refused to be forgotten. My rented cottage stood at the edge of the village, near a dense forest. The villagers were welcoming, but oddly insistent about one thing: don't stay out after the church bells chime at 9. They offered no explanation, brushing it off as tradition, but the unease in their eyes told a different story. On Christmas Eve, after the bells had rung and the village lights dimmed, I stepped outside. The moonlit snow sparkled, and the stillness was almost hypnotic. But as I admired the serene beauty, I noticed something strange. Faint footprints in the snow, leading from the village toward the forest. They were small, like a child's, and fresh. Curiosity compelled me to follow. The footprints led to the edge of the woods, where they stopped abruptly. That's when I saw her. A girl, no older than 10, stood just beyond the first row of trees. She wore a white dress that shimmered in the moonlight and had no coat or shoes. Despite the biting cold, she seemed unbothered. Her eyes locked onto mine, and she raised a hand, beckoning me closer. "Are you lost?" I called out, my voice echoing in the silence. She didn't reply but turned and drifted deeper into the woods. Against my better judgment, I followed. The forest grew darker with each step, the towering trees blocking out the moonlight. My flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows that danced around me. The air grew colder, and a strange hum began to fill the silence, like whispers just out of reach. Suddenly she stopped and turned to face me. Her pale eyes seemed to glow faintly in the dark, and for a moment I felt rooted to the spot. She raised a hand and pointed to the ground. As I looked down, I saw something half buried in the snow. An old lantern, its glass cracked but still intact. Before I could examine it further, the whispering grew louder, surrounding me. I looked up and saw figures emerging from the shadows. They were faint, like the girl, and their clothes were tattered, worn by time. Their faces were expressionless, their eyes empty. They stood silently watching me, and among them was the girl. I stumbled back, clutching the lantern. The whispers turned to a low wail, and the figures began to move closer. Panic set in, and I ran. Branches clawed at me as I tore through the forest, the lantern swinging wildly in my hand. When I finally broke through the trees and reached my cottage, I collapsed inside, bolting the door behind me. The next morning, shaken but alive, I sought out the village elder. When I recounted my experience, her expression darkened. She told me of a tragedy that had occurred decades ago, not during Christmas, but on a cold January night. A group of children had ventured into the forest to play, but never returned. A search party found only fragments of their belongings, including a lantern like the one I now held. The children were presumed lost to the harsh elements, and since that day, strange occurrences had plagued the village. The elder explained that the spirits of those children were bound to the forest, reliving their final moments, seeking warmth and guidance. On Christmas, their presence grew stronger, drawn to the light and warmth of the living. The bells at 9 were meant to warn villagers to stay inside, out of their reach. That night, I placed the lantern outside, as the elder suggested, and lit a candle in my window. The light flickered softly, and in the distance, I thought I saw faint shadows moving near the edge of the forest. But they didn't come closer. By morning, the lantern was gone, and the heaviness that had gripped the village seemed to lift. Though I left the village after Christmas, the memory of that night stayed with me. Every Christmas Eve since, I light a candle in my window, a quiet gesture for the lost souls who still wander, searching for a way home. If you ever visit that little village, remember, when the bells chime at 9, heed their warning and stay inside. If this chilling tale gave you goosebumps, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more stories like this. Thank you for tuning in to Ghostly Echoes. Until next time,